A heavy wooden gavel cracked through the stillness of the courtroom like a gunshot, sealing what every local reporter, every juror, and every spectator already believed was another open and shut case. Two decorated officers in pressed Class A uniforms had just sworn under oath that the quiet black man at the defense table was a violent narcotics trafficker. The jury leaned forward, convinced. The judge's face already carried the hard set of a man ready to throw the book. They never checked his wallet carefully enough, and the man they had framed was about to open that wallet and end their careers, their freedom, and the entire corrupt machine they had built. Rain hammered the cracked asphalt of State Route 9 in thick, blinding sheets. The highway curved through the decaying industrial outskirts of Millfield, Pennsylvania, an old steel town that had never recovered from the mills shutting down. It was 1:23 a.m. on a Tuesday in mid-October, the kind of night when the only people still on the road were long-haul truckers, the desperate and predators hunting easy prey. Cole Brennan kept both hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel of an unremarkable 2014 Ford Taurus. At 34, he had the kind of calm, unreadable face that gave nothing away. Faded gray hoodie, simple blue jeans, worn boots. To anyone glancing through the rain-streaked glass, he looked like just another exhausted traveler trying to get home. He did not look like a man with 2 master's degrees. He certainly did not look like a senior special agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Civil Rights Division. That was the point. For 8 months, the Department of Justice had been quietly stacking complaints against the Ashland County Police Department. The pattern never changed. Racial profiling, illegal searches, excessive force, and a tight little extortion racket run by a clique of patrol officers who preyed on minorities driving through their jurisdiction. The local district attorney always backed the cops. Dash cameras somehow always failed. Victims were usually too frightened or too broke to fight back. The Bureau needed proof that could not be explained away. They needed a sting. They needed bait. In the rearview mirror, headlights surged up fast and close, riding the bumper hard. Cole kept the speedometer locked at exactly 55 in a 55 zone. He did not brake. He did not swerve. Then the night exploded into red and blue. The siren cut through the storm like a blade. Cole flicked on the turn signal, eased the Taurus onto the muddy shoulder, shifted into park, and placed both hands flat and visible on the steering wheel. Freezing rain lashed his face through the open window. 2 figures climbed out of the cruiser. Officer Hank Voss was thick-necked and heavy, a man with a reputation for breaking jaws before he asked questions. His partner, Officer Tyler Maddox, was younger, leaner, twitchy, the kind of cop desperate to prove himself to the veterans. These 2 names sat at the very top of Cole's federal watch list. Voss reached the driver's window and shoved a high-powered mag light straight into Cole's eyes, blinding him. "You know why I pulled you over, boy?" The voice was a low, practiced rasp, full of contempt. "I don't, officer," Cole answered evenly, forcing himself not to shield his eyes. "I was maintaining the speed limit. You were swerving back there, crossed the yellow line. Looks to me like you're driving under the influence. License and registration. They're in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach for them now." "Move slow." Voss's hand settled heavily on the butt of his service weapon. On the passenger side, Maddox pressed his face to the glass, hand also hovering near his gun. Cole moved with exaggerated care, retrieving a real civilian driver's license and registration that identified him only as an IT consultant from 2 counties over. His federal credentials and service weapon remained locked inside a biometric safe welded into the trunk. Out here in the dark, he was completely exposed. Voss snatched the cards, glanced at the name, and sneered. "Cole, what are you doing out in Millfield at this hour? This ain't exactly your kind of neighborhood." "Just passing through on my way home, officer." Voss leaned in. The smell of stale coffee and chewing tobacco filled the cabin. "I smell marijuana," the magic words, the golden ticket past the Fourth Amendment. Cole had never smoked a day in his life. The Bureau motor pool had detailed the Taurus only hours earlier. There was no odor. On State Route 9 at 1:23 in the morning, reality was whatever Hank Voss declared it to be. There's no marijuana in this vehicle, officer. Step out of the car. The door flew open. Voss grabbed the scruff of Cole's hoodie and slammed him hard against the side of the Taurus. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Cold steel handcuffs bit into his wrists as Voss wrenched his arms behind his back. "Stop resisting!" Maddox shouted from the other side. Pure theater for the dash cam microphone, if it was even recording. "I am not resisting." Cole's cheek was pressed against freezing wet metal. "Shut your mouth." Voss drove an elbow into Cole's ribs. While Voss held him pinned, Maddox tore through the car. Seats ripped forward, glove box dumped, upholstery yanked. 10 freezing minutes passed. Blood trickled down Cole's cheek where his face had scraped the rain gutter. "Look what we have here!" Maddox emerged, holding a clear plastic baggie of white powder. It was a clumsy amateur plant. They hadn't even tried to hide it. Voss chuckled darkly, rain streaming down his face. "Looks like our IT guy is trafficking narcotics. That's a felony, Cole. You're going away for a long, long time." Cole could have ended it right then. He could have demanded they open the trunk. He could have given the federal distress code. But if he did, Voss and Maddox would claim a misunderstanding, take a paid suspension, and be back on the street in a month. The Bureau needed them to double down. They needed the officers to commit perjury on the public record. "I have nothing to say," Cole said quietly, looking straight into Voss's eyes. "I want a lawyer." "You're gonna need a miracle." Voss shoved him toward the cruiser. The Ashland County Jail smelled of bleach, unwashed bodies, and quiet despair. Cole sat on a rusted metal bench in a holding cell under buzzing fluorescent lights, clothes still damp, ribs throbbing. Around him, 3 other men slept on the cold floor, wrapped in thin wool blankets. He had been alone in that cell for 14 hours, standard isolation, meant to break a suspect before he ever saw a magistrate. When the steel door finally clattered open, a bored corrections officer barked his name. "Brennan, you're up. DA wants a word." Shackled at wrists and ankles like a violent trafficker, Cole shuffled down a long corridor into a windowless interrogation room. Assistant District Attorney Victor Langley sat at the metal table in an expensive suit that looked out of place in the crumbling county building. Sharp-featured, ambitious, he built his conviction rate by bullying terrified defendants into plea deals. "Sit down, Cole." Langley did not look up from a manila folder. Cole sat. The chains rattled. Langley closed the file. "I'm going to shoot straight with you. You're in a lot of trouble. Officers Voss and Maddox recovered 30 grams of cocaine from under your driver's seat. They've sworn out a statement that you were driving erratically, resisted arrest, and tried to assault them. That is a serious package." "That is a lie," Cole said, voice rough from dehydration. "I was perfectly compliant. The drugs were planted." Langley laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Planted. Right. Never heard that one before. Look, you have no record. I'm a reasonable guy. Judge Everett Sloan hates drug dealers. You take this to trial, and you're looking at 10 to 15 in a state pen. Sign a confession right now, plead to a lesser charge of possession with intent, and I'll recommend 3 years of probation. You walk out of here today. Felony on the record, sure, but you sleep in your own bed tonight. The classic trap. Corner an innocent man. Threaten him with a decade. Offer a lifeline that ruins his life but saves his freedom. I'm not pleading guilty to a crime I didn't commit," Cole said flatly. "I want my phone call." The reasonable mask slipped. The predator underneath showed its teeth. "Suit yourself. Don't say I didn't throw you a rope. When Sloan sends you upstate, remember this conversation." An hour later, Cole stood at a grease-stained payphone. He dialed a secure 202 number in Washington. "Director's office. This is Alpha 7 Tango." A brief pause. Then the voice of Special Agent in Charge, Daniel Reeves. "Cole, we've been tracking your GPS. You're inside Ashland County lockup. Are you compromised? Negative. Cover is intact. Voss and Maddox took the bait. They planted what looks like flour or drywall dust and charged me with felony possession. Langley just tried to strong-arm a plea. Any injuries? Bruised ribs. Nothing broken. They got physical. I kept my hands visible the whole time. I can make a call and have you extracted in 10 minutes. We can indict on the civil rights violations right now. No. If we pull the plug now, it's just my word against theirs on a traffic stop. They'll claim an honest mistake about the drugs. We need them locked into the lie under oath. Perjury. Falsifying evidence. Conspiracy to violate civil rights. I want them on the stand. A heavy sigh. You're taking a massive risk. Sloan runs a kangaroo court. Then send me the best kangaroo tamer we have. I'll send Claire Donovan, DOJ Civil Rights. She'll pose as high-end private counsel. We'll have your bail by morning. Sit tight. We're going to burn their house down. The next morning, the heavy steel doors opened, and Cole stepped into crisp autumn air. Waiting beside a black Lincolntown car was Claire Donovan, brilliant, razor-sharp, a federal prosecutor who had dismantled corrupt politicians, mob bosses, and crooked cops up and down the eastern seaboard. Tailored charcoal suit, high-powered fixer written all over her. She handed him a cup of black coffee. You look like hell, Agent Brennan. You should see the other guys' careers. They climbed into the back seat. Claire reviewed the police report as the corrupt town of Millfield rolled past the tinted windows. It's a work of fiction. Voss claims you were belligerent, that you lunged at him, that the drugs were in plain view. They've scheduled trial in 60 days. Sloan is fast-tracking it to clear his docket. And the dash cam? Miraculously corrupted. Just like the last 14 stops Voss made. They think they're untouchable. Cole stared out at the gray industrial landscape. Let them think that. Let them get comfortable. When they sit in that witness box, they're going to dig their own graves. 60 days later, the Ashland County Courthouse felt stiflingly warm. Dark oak paneling, the smell of floor wax and decades of institutional bias. Cole sat at the defense table in a crisp navy suit, calm, professional. Nothing like the battered man pulled over on Route 9. Beside him, Claire Donovan organized legal pads with meticulous care. No federal insignia. To everyone in the room, she was simply C. Donovan, Esquire, an expensive out-of-town lawyer hired by a desperate defendant. At the prosecution table, Victor Langley looked smug, whispering confidently with Officer Hank Voss, who sat in the first row in full dress uniform, medals gleaming. All rise. Judge Everett Sloan swept in. White hair, hard eyes, a reputation for harsh sentences. He peered over his glasses at Cole with open distaste. Case of the Commonwealth versus Cole Brennan. Mr. Langley, ready? The Commonwealth is ready, Your Honor. Defense is ready. Claire's voice carried cleanly through the cavernous room. The jury filed in, 12 local men and women who looked at Cole with polite suspicion. Langley's opening was a master class in character assassination. He painted Cole as a wolf in sheep's clothing, a quiet menace running a lucrative drug operation. He praised the bravery of Officers Voss and Maddox for getting poison off the streets of Millfield. Claire's opening lasted less than 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commonwealth's entire case rests on the testimony of 2 men. By the end of this trial, you will see this case is not about drugs. It is not about a traffic stop. It is about power, and what happens when those trusted to wield it believe they are above the law. Listen closely to the officer's words today. Very closely. Langley called Hank Voss. Voss marched up, raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth, and settled into the witness box radiating confidence. Langley walked him gently through 15 years of service, then pivoted to the night of October 17th. Officer Voss, describe the defendant's behavior when you initiated the stop. He was erratic, sir, swerving across the lanes. When I approached, I immediately detected the strong odor of raw marijuana. When I asked him to step out, he became highly aggressive. He refused commands. He attempted to strike me. I had to restrain him against the vehicle for my own safety. And during your search? Underneath the driver's seat, in plain view once the door was open, we found a plastic bag containing what later tested as 30 grams of cocaine. Thank you, officer. No further questions. Judge Sloan looked to Claire. Cross-examination? She stood slowly. No notepad. No files. She walked to the center of the courtroom and simply stared at Voss for a long, silent moment. The jury leaned forward. Voss's confident smile flickered. Officer Voss, you testified the defendant was swerving, correct? That is correct. And upon opening the door, you immediately smelled marijuana. Yes, ma'am. And that the defendant lunged at you, requiring physical force. He resisted. I did what I had to do. Claire nodded. What is the protocol for the dashboard camera in your patrol vehicle? Langley shot up. Objection. Relevance. We've already established the camera was malfunctioning. I'll allow it, Sloan grumbled. Get to the point, counselor. The protocol, Voss said, jaw tightening, is that the camera activates automatically when the emergency lights go on. As my report states, the system experienced a hard drive failure that night. It didn't record. How unfortunate, Claire said dryly, and a stroke of terrible luck for my client, since it would have shown him maintaining his lane, complying with every order, and being assaulted without provocation. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Watch yourself, Ms. Donovan, Claire continued, unfazed. Because your camera was broken, this entire case rests on your sworn word. You are under oath. You understand the penalty for perjury. Voss sneered. I've been a cop for 15 years. I know what an oath is. Everything I said is the absolute truth. Claire walked back to her table, picked up a single manila folder, and turned. The trap was set. Voss had locked himself into the lie on the federal record. Officer, she said, voice dropping, all politeness gone. You claim the drugs belonged to my client. You claim you ran his background. When you looked at his driver's license, what did you think his profession was? He said he was an IT guy, computer stuff. Claire looked at Cole. Cole looked back, face empty of emotion. Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce a piece of evidence unlawfully seized from the defendant's vehicle and conveniently omitted from Officer Voss's report. We would also like to call a new witness. Sloan frowned. What evidence? What witness? You haven't filed any motions for a surprise witness. I didn't need to, Your Honor, because the witness is the defendant, and the evidence is his actual occupation. The courtroom went dead silent. Langley looked confused. Voss's smirk vanished, replaced by sudden creeping dread. Sloan's face flushed deep crimson. He gripped the gavel until his knuckles whitened. Ms. Donovan, this is a court of law, not a theater. You are entirely out of order. If you want to call the defendant, that is your right, but I will not tolerate ambush tactics. No tricks, Your Honor, just the truth. The defense calls Cole Brennan. A low murmur ran through the jury box. Defendants in trafficking cases almost never took the stand. It was legal suicide. Langley leaned back, hungry, cracking his knuckles, ready to tear Cole apart. In the gallery, Voss crossed his arms, lip curled. Beside him, Maddox bounced his knee, trying to hide the nerves. Cole rose. He moved with quiet, lethal grace, posture perfect, eyes locked forward. He walked to the witness box, placed his hand on the worn Bible, and swore the oath. Please state your full name for the record. Cole Brennan. Claire approached. Mr. Brennan, when Officer Voss pulled you over on the night of October 17th, he claimed he ran your civilian license and asked your profession. What did you tell him? I told him I was an IT consultant. Was that the truth? No, it was a cover identity. Langley leaped up. Objection. Relevance. The defendant's penchant for lying to law enforcement is already well established. Overruled. I want to see where counsel is going. Tread lightly. Claire never missed a beat. If you are not an IT consultant, what is your actual profession? Cole looked directly at the jury. I am a senior special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, assigned to the Civil Rights Division, based out of Washington, D.C. The courtroom exhaled in a collective, stunned gasp. Langley barked an incredulous laugh. "Your Honor, this is absurd. The defendant is making a mockery of these proceedings. He's a street-level dealer claiming to be federal law enforcement." Sloan slammed the gavel. "Order! Ms. Donovan, you had better have something to back this up, or I will hold you both in contempt." "With the court's permission," Claire said calmly, "the defendant has his credentials on his person. I ask that he be allowed to present them." Sloan scrutinized Cole. "Proceed." Slowly, deliberately, Cole reached into the breast pocket of his navy suit and withdrew a flat, dark leather wallet. He flipped it open. The gold shield of the Federal Bureau of Investigation caught the overhead lights and gleamed with heavy, undeniable authority. Beside it, behind thick plastic, was Cole's official federal identification, photograph, thumbprint, and the signature of the director of the FBI. The silence that followed was deafening. Langley's jaw went slack. The smug grin slid off his face, replaced by pale, sickening realization. In the gallery, the blood drained from Hank Voss's face. He gripped the bench so hard the wood groaned. Next to him, Tyler Maddox looked like he might vomit, eyes darting toward the exit. Judge Sloan adjusted his glasses, hands trembling slightly. "Bailiff, bring that to the bench." The bailiff, equally shell-shocked, carried the wallet up. Sloan examined the watermark, the seal, the holographic overlay for a long, agonizing minute. When he looked up, the irritation in his eyes had been replaced by profound, creeping dread. "These appear to be authentic federal credentials." "They are, Your Honor," Claire said, voice ringing through the silent room. "Agent Brennan is the lead investigator of Operation Broken Shield, a joint federal task force authorized by the Department of Justice to investigate systemic corruption, civil rights violations, and evidence tampering within the Ashland County Police Department." "This is a trick!" Voss suddenly shouted from the gallery, abandoning all decorum. He stood, chest heaving, pointing a shaking finger at Cole. "It's fake! He's a dealer! I found the drugs myself!" "Order in this court!" Sloan roared, slamming the gavel repeatedly. "Officer Voss, sit down and keep your mouth shut, or I will have you removed and cited for contempt." Voss sank back, breathing hard. The trap had sprung. The teeth were already deep in his leg. Claire turned back to Cole. "Agent Brennan, Officer Voss just testified under oath that you were driving erratically on the night of October 17th. Is that true?" "No, ma'am. I had the vehicle set on cruise control at exactly 55 miles per hour. My hands were at 10 and 2. I never crossed the center line." He also testified that upon approaching your window, he immediately smelled raw marijuana. "Did you have marijuana in the vehicle?" "No, I do not consume narcotics. The vehicle was a freshly detailed Bureau fleet car. There was absolutely no odor of marijuana." "And the 30 grams of cocaine found under your seat?" "I watched Officer Tyler Maddox carry a plastic baggie from his own utility belt and place it underneath my driver's seat, while Officer Voss held me pinned against the hood of my car." Langley's voice cracked. "Objection. This is hearsay. One man's word against 2 decorated officers. Just because he carries a badge doesn't mean he's telling the truth." Claire smiled, a cold, merciless smile. "You're entirely right, Mr. Langley. An FBI agent's word is still just a word, which is why the Bureau does not rely solely on testimony when investigating corrupt law enforcement." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the defense wishes to introduce Exhibit F into evidence." "What is Exhibit F?" "An encrypted audio-visual recording. While the Ashland County Police Department's dashboard cameras have a tragic, recurring habit of malfunctioning, Agent Brennan's Bureau fleet vehicle was equipped with a military-grade 360-degree surveillance array hidden in the headliner, the side mirrors, and the dashboard air vents. It transmitted directly to a secure server in Washington, D.C. In the gallery, Maddox let out a quiet, pathetic whimper. Voss looked like a man who had just stepped on a landmine and heard the click. "Play the tape," Judge Sloan ordered, voice hollow. Claire plugged a secure flash drive into the court's multimedia system. The large flat screen beside the jury box flickered to life. Torrential rain filled the courtroom. The screen showed a crystal-clear, high-definition, infrared-enhanced feed from the front of Cole's Ford Taurus. The timestamp read 1:23:17 a.m. The Taurus held perfectly steady in the center of the lane. A digital readout confirmed speed, 55.0 mph. Steering angle, 0.0 degree. No swerving, no erratic driving. Then the blinding red and blue lights of the police cruiser flared in the rear-view camera. The courtroom watched in absolute silence as Cole safely pulled over. Inside the cabin, the audio picked up his calm, measured breathing. The camera switched to the side mirror view as Hank Voss approached. "Do you know why I pulled you over, boy?" Voss's arrogant rasp echoed through the room. The jury flinched. Hearing the officer's real tone, unfiltered, aggressive, dripping with malice, was nothing like the polite, respectful performance he had just given on the stand. They watched Cole remain perfectly calm, hands visible. They watched Voss lie about the swerving. They heard him invent the smell of marijuana. Then came the physical assault. The hidden cameras captured every brutal second. The jury gasped as Voss yanked Cole from the car by the hoodie. The external microphone picked up the sickening thud of Cole's face being smashed against the cold, wet roof. "Stop resisting!" Maddox's voice shouted on the tape. "I am not resisting. Shut your mouth!" Voss's elbow drove hard into Cole's ribs. In the jury box, an older woman in the front row covered her mouth, staring at Voss with absolute horror. But the most damning moment was still coming. The feed switched to the interior cabin. Dark, but the bureau's infrared lens illuminated everything perfectly. The jury watched Tyler Maddox lean into the driver's side. He did not search the glove box. He did not check the center console. He reached directly into the cargo pocket of his own tactical pants and pulled out a clear plastic baggie filled with white powder. He paused, looking over his shoulder toward Voss. "Where do you want me to put this, Hank?" The microphone hidden in the air vent, inches from his face, captured every word with terrifying clarity. "Under the seat. Make it look messy. We're going to fry this guy." Maddox tossed the bag under the seat, backed out, and yelled his theatrical, triumphant line. "Look what we have here." Claire hit the spacebar, freezing the frame on Maddox's face as he planted the drugs. The silence in the courtroom was absolute, the silence of total, devastating destruction. Victor Langley sat frozen, face ashen, staring at his legal pad, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. His political career, his pristine conviction record, his entire livelihood were disintegrating in front of him. "Your Honor," Claire said, cutting through the heavy quiet. Her voice was no longer that of a defense attorney playing a part. It was the sharp, commanding tone of a federal prosecutor. "The evidence before this court proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that Officers Voss and Maddox engaged in conspiracy, aggravated assault under color of law, evidence tampering, and outright perjury on this very witness stand less than 20 minutes ago." Judge Sloan ran a trembling hand over his face. He looked out at the gallery, eyes locking onto Voss. Sloan was a harsh judge, but he was not a fool. He knew when a reckoning had arrived. "Mr. Langley," he said, voice dangerously quiet, "do you have anything to say?" Langley stood, knees visibly shaking. "Your Honor, the Commonwealth was completely unaware of this evidence. The prosecution was willfully deceived by the investigating officers. In light of this revelation, the Commonwealth moves to immediately dismiss all charges against the defendant with prejudice." "Oh, you're dismissing the charges?" Claire's tone was mocking. "That's very generous of you, Mr. Langley, but we aren't finished." She turned toward the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom and gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The doors swung open hard, hitting the rubber stops with a loud crack. 6 men and women in tactical gear, bulletproof vests emblazoned with large yellow letters FBI, strode into the courtroom. Leading them was Supervisory Special Agent Grant Ellison, tall, imposing, gray at the temples, eyes like chipped flint. Ellison marched straight down the center aisle and stopped at the low wooden gate. "What is the meaning of this?" Judge Sloan sputtered, though he made no move to use the gavel. Ellison flashed his own badge. "Federal warrant, Your Honor. Sorry for the interruption, but this building is now an active federal crime scene." He turned to the gallery. "Hank Voss, Tyler Maddox, stand up." Maddox instantly burst into tears, burying his face in his hands, sobbing as the reality of his ruined life crashed down. Voss reacted like a cornered animal. He leaped up, shoved a spectator aside, and made a desperate break for the side exit. He didn't make 3 steps. Cole Brennan vaulted over the wooden rail of the witness box with terrifying speed. He hit the floor, closed the distance in 2 massive strides, and tackled Voss to the hardwood. The impact shook the front rows. Voss thrashed, throwing a wild punch that grazed Cole's shoulder. The FBI agent was a master of close-quarters combat. He caught Voss's arm, twisted it sharply behind the corrupt cop's back, and drove his knee firmly between Voss's shoulder blades, the exact same way Voss had pinned him against the hood of the Taurus 2 months earlier. "Stop resisting," Cole commanded. No panic in his voice, only cold, absolute authority. Ellison and 2 other agents rushed over, snapping heavy steel handcuffs onto Voss's wrists. The sharp click-click echoed in the quiet room. Ellison hauled him to his feet. The dress uniform was rumpled, medals crooked, face flushed with rage and humiliation. "Hank Voss, you are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights, perjury, evidence tampering, and assault under color of law. You have the right to remain silent. If you have half a brain left, I suggest you start using it." Another agent had already pulled the weeping Maddox to his feet and cuffed him without resistance. Cole stood, straightened his suit jacket, and looked at Voss, who glared with pure venomous hatred. "You set us up," Voss spat, blood dripping from his lip where he had hit the floor. Cole stepped in close so only Voss could hear. "I drove the speed limit, Hank. You did the rest all by yourself." As the federal agents began hauling the 2 disgraced officers down the center aisle, Claire Donovan looked up at the stunned judge. "Your Honor, simultaneous to these arrests, 50 FBI agents are currently executing search warrants at the Ashland County Police Department headquarters. Chief of Police Malcolm Reed is being taken into federal custody as we speak. We are seizing all hard drives, internal affairs records, and dash cam footage archives." She turned her gaze slowly to Victor Langley, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "We will also be conducting a comprehensive independent federal audit of every single narcotics conviction secured by this district attorney's office over the last 5 years. I suggest you retain counsel, Mr. Langley. You're going to need it." The courtroom sat in absolute shock. The jury had not merely watched a trial. They had witnessed the decapitation of an entire corrupt empire. Cole walked slowly back to the defense table. He was no longer the defendant. He was the predator, and the hunt was finally over. Across town, the real war had just begun. Chief Malcolm Reed sat behind a massive mahogany desk at Ashland County Police Headquarters. A relic of an older, uglier era of law enforcement, he had run his department like a feudal lord, protecting loyal officers no matter their crimes, so long as arrest quotas stayed high and lucrative civil asset forfeitures kept flowing into the department's unofficial slush fund. He was casually sipping morning coffee, reviewing a budget proposal, when his private, unrecorded line began to ring frantically. Chief, it's Sergeant Miller at the courthouse. It's a bloodbath down here. Voss and Maddox just got locked up. Federal agents. The guy they busted on Route 9 wasn't a dealer. He's FBI. The whole thing was a federal sting." Reed's coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the polished floor. Hot liquid splashed across his shoes. He didn't flinch. His stomach dropped into a bottomless abyss. "Lock down the courthouse," he barked. voice trembling despite his best efforts. Don't say another word to anyone. He slammed the phone down. He knew exactly what an FBI Civil Rights Division sting meant. They didn't come for a couple of patrolmen. They came for the crown. He sprang from the desk, unlocked the bottom drawer, and yanked out a heavy steel trash can and a commercial-grade paper shredder. Frantically, he pulled files, internal affairs complaints, use of force reviews, the secret ledger of cash seizures from Route 9 that had never made it into the evidence room, and shoved thick stacks into the shredder. The machine whined as it chewed through years of corruption. He needed the server room. He needed to wipe the digital dispatch logs. Reed sprinted out of his office, ignoring the confused looks of the desk sergeants in the bullpen. He made it down the hallway, hand already on the server room door handle, when the front glass doors of the precinct exploded inward. FBI, federal search warrant. Step away from your desks, hands where we can see them. A flood of federal agents in heavy tactical vests poured into the lobby, moving with terrifying precision, securing exits, ordering local officers to surrender their weapons. Agent Paige Harlow, a seasoned investigator with a no-nonsense demeanor, led the charge down the administrative hallway. She rounded the corner and locked eyes with Chief Reed, whose hand was still on the server room door. "Chief Malcolm Reed," she commanded, voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. "Step away from the door. Keep your hands where I can see them." Reed froze. He looked at the half-dozen heavily armed agents leveling weapons in his direction. The empire he had built over 20 years was disintegrating in less than 20 seconds. Slowly he raised his hands. "You have no jurisdiction here," he lied, a pathetic final attempt at authority. "Save it for the judge, Chief." Harlow stepped forward and secured his wrists in heavy zip ties. "We have the servers, we have the ledgers, and thanks to your boys Voss and Maddox, we have the federal mandate to tear this department down to the studs." Back at the courthouse, Victor Langley was living his own private hell. The ambitious district attorney had retreated to his private chambers and locked the heavy oak door. He paced furiously, sweating through his expensive suit. He had just watched his 2-star witnesses hauled out in federal cuffs, and the defense attorney had practically promised him an indictment. He grabbed his cell phone and dialed the mayor's private number. Voicemail. He dialed the state attorney general. Voicemail. The political machine that had protected him for years was already cutting ties. He was radioactive. A sharp knock. Before he could answer, the door swung open. Cole Brennan walked in, no longer playing the meek defendant, towering, commanding, the FBI shield clipped prominently to his belt. Right behind him was Claire Donovan, briefcase in hand, looking like a shark that had just smelled blood. "You can't just barge in here," Langley stammered, backing toward his desk. "This is a restricted area." "This is a crime scene, Victor," Claire corrected, closing the door. "Take a seat. We're going to have a very frank conversation about your future." Langley collapsed into his leather chair. The fight had left him completely. Cole planted both hands on the desk and leaned in close. "I spent 2 months in your county jail, Langley. I listened to the men in there. I heard their stories, dozens of them, all singing the exact same tune. They got pulled over on Route 9. The dash cams magically failed. Drugs were miraculously found. And then you, the heroic district attorney, swooped in to offer them a plea deal they couldn't refuse." Langley swallowed hard, refusing to meet Cole's eyes. "I prosecute the evidence the police bring me. If the cops are dirty, that's on them. I didn't know." Claire laughed softly and dropped a thick manila folder onto the desk. "Please, Victor, don't insult our intelligence. We have the emails between you and Chief Reed. We have the conviction statistics. You knew Voss was planting evidence, and you used it to push your conviction rate to 98% so you could run for state senate next year." Langley stared at the folder. It was over. The career, the political aspirations, the country club memberships, all of it gone. "What do you want?" he whispered, voice cracking. "I want the entire machine," Cole said coldly. "Voss and Maddox were the muscle. Reed was the shield. You were the legal hammer. But we know it goes higher. We know local judges were taking kickbacks from the private probation companies you forced these innocent people into. I want names, Victor. I want bank accounts. I want every single dirty secret this county has been burying for the last decade. If I give them to you, what happens to me? You resign immediately, Claire stated, leaving no room for negotiation. You surrender your law license. You plead guilty to 1 count of federal conspiracy to violate civil rights. In exchange, I will personally recommend a sentence of 5 years in a minimum security federal facility instead of the 25 you'll get if I try you for racketeering. Langley looked at Cole, searching for any sign of mercy. He found none. Cole's eyes were ice, remembering the terrified, innocent men sleeping on the concrete floors of the county lockup. 5 years, Langley echoed, hollowly. He nodded slowly, tears welling. Okay, I'll tell you everything. 14 months later, the atmosphere inside the United States District Court was terrifyingly impartial. Federal Judge Preston Hale presided over the highly publicized sentencing phase of Operation Broken Shield. The gallery was not filled with gawkers. It was packed with the victims, dozens of men and women who had been terrorized, framed, and extorted on State Route 9, sitting in quiet dignity. Thanks to the FBI's relentless audit of the county's records, more than 200 wrongful convictions had been successfully overturned. Cole Brennan sat in the second row in a sharp charcoal suit. Beside him sat Agent Paige Harlow and Claire Donovan, representing the United States Department of Justice. When the U.S. Marshals led the defendants into the room, the shift in power was absolute. Hank Voss, completely stripped of his badge and unearned authority, wore a bright orange federal jumpsuit. Head shaved, posture broken, eyes glued to the floor. Tyler Maddox trembled noticeably behind him, followed by the disgraced Chief Malcolm Reed and former District Attorney Victor Langley. Judge Hale adjusted his glasses, stern gaze sweeping over the chained men. This court has presided over many difficult cases, he boomed, voice echoing with absolute finality. But rarely have I seen such a calculated betrayal of public trust. You weaponized the justice system to prey upon the vulnerable. His cold eyes locked onto Voss. Hank Voss, you were the architect of this street-level terror. You believed your badge made you entirely immune to consequences. You were wrong. For the charges of conspiracy, aggravated assault, perjury, and civil rights violations, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. A collective sigh of relief washed over the gallery. A mother in the front row began to weep quietly, her framed son finally free. Judge Hale did not stop. He methodically dismantled the rest of the corrupt empire. Maddox received 5 years for his eventual cooperation. Chief Reed was handed 10 years for fostering and protecting the criminal enterprise. Finally, Victor Langley was sentenced to 7 years for bastardizing the law to build a political career on the backs of innocent citizens. As the marshals moved in to escort the men away, Voss finally lifted his head and locked eyes with Cole one last time across the room. Cole did not gloat. He did not smile. He simply offered the cold, unwavering stare of a man who had done his job. Voss dropped his gaze and shuffled through the heavy oak doors in chains, disappearing forever. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the concrete steps as Cole walked into the bright autumn sunlight, microphones thrust toward his face. Agent Brennan, how does it feel to take down an entire corrupt department? Cole paused, looking past the cameras to the exonerated citizens hugging their families in the plaza below. The badge is a sacred trust, he stated clearly, voice carrying over the crowd. When an officer violates that trust, they damage the integrity of every honest cop who wears the uniform the right way. Today is a reminder to anyone hiding behind a badge to commit crimes. We are watching, and we will find you. He walked down the steps to his waiting bureau SUV. Inside, Supervisory Special Agent Grant Ellison tossed a new, thick case file onto the dashboard. Corrupt Narcotics Task Force down south, Ellison said with a grim smile. Ready for the next one, Cole? Cole looked at the file, then started the engine. Always. The collapse of the Ashland County Police Department stands as a chilling reminder that absolute power corrupts absolutely, but no one is truly untouchable. It takes immense courage to stand against a rigged system, and the quiet, relentless bravery of undercover federal agents ensures that the shield of justice protects the innocent rather than hiding the guilty.